They called me many things: the hero, drunk, general, traitor, president, exile. But before the banners and the battles, before the Texas they write about now, I was just a boy with nothing but red clay on his boots and a storm brewing in his blood. My name is Sam Houston, and this is not just a story of a republic. This is the story of a man chasing meaning across every border drawn by men and memory. I was born in the spring of 1793 in the hills of Rockbridge County, Virginia. My father was a soldier of the Revolution, a man of hard lines and harder discipline. He died when I was only 13, leaving my mother to carry our family of 9 into the uncertainty of Tennessee. She did it without complaint, though the weight nearly broke her back. We arrived with nothing but what we could haul and the will to start again. That land, wild and wide, carved something out of me. Or perhaps it simply revealed what was already there. I ran away when I was barely 16, not from hatred, but from hunger. Hunger for something the fields and farms couldn't give. I crossed into Cherokee lands and lived among them for years. I learned their language, wore their clothes, hunted with their warriors. They named me the Raven. And in that name, I found a part of myself I had not known was missing. It was not mimicry, it was kinship. I loved a Cherokee woman, smoked at their fires, and knew peace for the first time in a world that did not make space for peace. But peace does not last, not for a man like me. War came knocking, and I answered. In the War of 1812, I joined General Jackson's army. At the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, I was wounded 3 times, once in the thigh by an arrow, then a bullet through my shoulder, then another through the upper arm. They tried to take it. I told them I'd rather die whole. They called it foolishness. I called it defiance. I was 21 and already felt like I'd lived a dozen lives. Jackson became something of a mentor to me, or perhaps a mirror. We shared the fire, the fury, the fondness for command. But I was no Jackson. Where he held his fury tight, I let mine loose. It burned bridges as fast as it built reputations. I rose fast, from soldier to Indian agent to congressman, and then fell just as quick. Tennessee made me governor when I was 34, and I threw it all away. They say I abandoned my post, that I vanished like a coward, but I left because my soul was unraveling. My marriage collapsed after mere weeks. I could not breathe in the house they gave me, could not look in the mirror without seeing a stranger. I put down the pen, mounted a horse, and rode west into exile, back to the Cherokee. They took me in again, no questions, no judgment. I slept in huts, walked among their wounded, and raged with them against the betrayal of treaties. When a government delegation called me a savage in white man's skin, I spit blood and broken teeth onto their boots. They never came back. I was wild again, and for a while I was free. But destiny is a drum that beats louder the further you run from it. By the 1830s, Texas had become that drum. It was a place made for men like me, half outlaw, half prophet, full of scars and ambition. I crossed the Sabine in a borrowed coat, carrying nothing but my name and my need to matter again. I saw a land rich in courage but strangled by confusion. I saw Mexicans and Anglos both hungry for control, and no one willing to bleed for justice. So I bled. I fought under Stephen F. Austin, watched men die for a dream they couldn't name. I saw Santa Anna's forces crush resistance with fire and chains. But I also saw a spark in the eyes of farmers, blacksmiths, drunkards, and thieves who believed Texas could be more than a word in someone else's ledger. When they asked me to lead, I said yes, not because I wanted power, but because I had nothing left to fear. And when the Alamo fell, when Goliad was turned into a massacre, I did not crumble. I counted bullets, I gathered breath, and I waited. I'll stop here, for now. Because this is the moment before the scream, before San Jacinto, before revenge and redemption burned in the same fire. If you want the rest, the glory, the regret, the madness, the republic. You'll have to walk with me a little further down this trail of blood and memory. San Jacinto was not a battle. It was a reckoning. It lasted less than 20 minutes, but in that blink of blood and thunder, we broke the spine of an empire. I gave the order, and my men, wounded, outnumbered, half-starved, roared into history. We captured Santa Anna himself, dressed in a private's coat, trying to melt into the grass. They wanted to hang him then and there. I said no. Not because he didn't deserve it, but because Texas needed a future, not just a grave. That decision haunted me more than the battle. They called me weak, a traitor to the dead at the Alamo and Goliad. But I was thinking 3 decades ahead. One man's blood could never balance the scales. I needed a treaty, recognition, survival. And we got it. The Republic of Texas was born, ragged, broke, furious, and proud. They made me president, twice. I slept on army cots, governed from wooden tables, and argued with men who thought revolutions should never end. But I knew better. A republic must calm its pulse if it wants to outlive its own heroes. I tried to bring order, printed money, appointed judges, negotiated borders. Most days I felt more like a schoolmaster than a statesman, but the shadows never left me. Pain followed me like a stray dog. My old wounds festered. Whiskey dulled them for a while, then betrayed me with trembling hands and shouted regrets. My second marriage, to Margaret, saved what was left of me. She was young, brave, and clear-eyed. She tethered me to the earth again, gave me 8 children and reason to hold on. And yet, I was never meant for peace. Texas joined the Union in 1845, and I took my seat in the U.S. Senate. There I fought for balance, between North and South, law and land, old honor and new greed. When others screamed for war, I spoke of compromise. When they drew swords, I offered handshakes. Some called me coward. Others said I was the last sane voice. But sanity is not a shield. In 1859, I was elected governor again, the only man to govern 2 American states. I begged Texas not to secede. I warned them that blood would flood the rivers, that no cause could survive such fire. They laughed, they cursed, they called me Judas. When they demanded I take an oath to the Confederacy, I refused, flat out, no bluff, no speeches. I walked away from the Capitol like I had walked away from so many things, proud, angry, and deeply alone. I spent my last years on a porch in Huntsville, rocking slowly, watching the world I helped shape unravel thread by thread. I wrote letters, some to friends, some to ghosts. I held my grandchildren in arms that once held rifles. I prayed more often. I drank less. And I told stories, not the clean ones they carve into textbooks, but the ones that hurt and heal in equal measure. When death came in 1863, I was ready. I was 70, and every bone in my body had earned its rest. They buried me on a hillside beneath the Texas sky. I asked for no monuments, just grass, stone, and silence. I do not pretend to be a perfect man. I was too quick to rage, too slow to forgive. I walked out on more than I stayed to fix, but I never stopped believing in the idea of Texas. Not as a state, not even as a country, but as a spirit. A defiant, unruly, beautiful spirit that refuses to die. And if one day you find yourself walking a lonely road beneath a sky too wide to tame, remember me. Not as a statue, not as a chapter in a book, but as a voice carried on the wind saying, keep going, keep fighting. The Republic of the Heart is never conquered,